Welcome, everybody, to Let's Thrive and Shine podcast and Thrive and Shine Beyond Belief. And what this podcast is about is helping leaders, entrepreneurs and business owners to be able to realise that maybe there is another way that we can manage our life, manage stress in a much better way, avoid the burnout traps that we often find ourselves in because we're racing along to the end journey and not really being present and focusing on the here and now. Or maybe it's that little imposter that might be holding you back and stopping you from thriving and shining, or those limiting beliefs that might be whispering in your ear telling you that you're not enough. And you know what? You are enough. We are all enough. And today we've got the lovely Jen that's going to be sharing her story of how she got to where she is right now. And she's learned from her experiences of suffering the burnout traps, and she's now helping others to be able to avoid them. So over to you, Jen. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for
Please
having me.
introduce yourself and tell us your journey.
So I'm Jen. I'm a certified wellness coach, and I help women in business achieve lasting success by overcoming stress and avoiding burnout. And I do this now really because of my own journey that I've been through. It's quite a long one, so I'll try and keep it as
keep it to the point.
We've got the timer on. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of spans well over a decade really, and it originally started within the workplace where I was signed off with stress, anxiety and depression, which the build up to that, I actually didn't really know what was going on. I didn't even know what stress, people say the stress, but I didn't really understand what stress really was. So I was signed off work. I was very much of the attitude, well, it's the job. If I don't go back and face it, it's not going to get any better. So I just took a few weeks off initially and I went back. And let's just say it wasn't long after that I was signed off really long term, and I stayed off really long term because it was full burnout and I just literally had nothing to give physically. I can only describe it as nothing to give physically, mentally, emotionally. Physically, I couldn't get through the days. Emotionally, I just felt a bit numb, and mentally, well, that's just a whole other story what it does. So yes, I was off quite a long time, and initially it was just kind of survival mode. I would struggle really to get out of bed and get up and get dressed and take the dogs for a walk. It was kind of at that level. Then I started going for the various things that your GPs recommend, different therapies and CBT and things, and nothing really hit the mark for me. And if I'm honest, I didn't really know what to do because nobody outside of that had really told me like what it really meant to be stressed like I was. And I remember for quite a long time I just really wanted somebody to flick a switch and make it all go away, and I was like, come on, when's somebody just going to make this go away? And then I woke up one day, and I'm not quite sure how this came about, but I just thought, you know what, there's only really me that can do this. And even though I'd had that moment, I still didn't have a clue what I was supposed to do because nobody had told me, but there was just something in me that said, there's only you that can do this. So really my first step in point from that was to leave the job I was in, because it was the job that was doing that to me, and it was a very unhealthy place to be. So I had a moment where I signed up to do a personal training diploma, which sounds really random when I was sort of like in the corporate environment. But the reason for that was before I had the symptoms of stress for a really long time before burnout hit. And what happens with stress is you have one symptom and then another. I know this now, I didn't know this then. And they all kind of just pile on top of each other till that burnout hit. So when I wasn't at the really bad place, I did religiously go to an exercise class twice a week. And I always used to come out feeling amazing. And that kind of just set something in me of the power of exercise at that time. I also developed irritable bowel brought on by stress. So I developed an interest in nutrition because suddenly I couldn't eat all these foods I ate. So that was why I thought, well, if I'm going to do something, let's do something I'm interested in. So a personal training diploma it was. And then after that, I got another job in a rehabilitation gym, which was working with mainly people over the age of 60 that had a chronic health condition, whether it was heart disease, lung disease, cancer, strokes, all kinds of things. And it was really good. It was not stressful at all. I mean, apart from my knowledge and taking these classes, I got to stand around chatting to people all day. It was wonderful. You know, so it wasn't stressful at all, but I can only describe it as it was always like just at the surface, and it would take the tiniest little thing to kind of tip me over the edge again. Like, you know, to when I say tip over like that, it's that unnecessary reaction to things, isn't it? And what I know now is that I didn't ever deal with my stress. I just moved on to something else because I thought that was the best thing to do. So that's kind of like how things went. Life just carried on. And as life does, it throws many other different challenges you along your journey. The job was less stressful. That was wonderful. There was other things like we were renovating a house. We were going through IVF. We were living with my in-laws. Not that that was a bad thing. They're really wonderful. I'm quite lucky that way. But it was all these things that, when I look back, were added layers of stress on top of somebody who was already really stressed, because I hadn't dealt with it. So anyway, basically what happened was, I had my baby. I had this wonderful maternity leave where I was in this bubble. I switched off, and it was probably the best time within that, from that initial stress sign off. Then of course the moment comes where you go back to work, doesn't it? So that's a whole new level of different stresses with the baby and work. And then on top of that, I thought, well, I'll start a business as well, because, you know, why not?
As you do.
There was a reason behind that. And the reason was that I was out all the time with my baby and the dogs, because when you've got dogs, you've got to go, you know. And I always used to feel amazing. And I just thought, where are all the other mums and babies? Come on, I've got to get them out. So that was my driving force behind my business. I started a fitness business, and I did outdoor postnatal exercise classes for mums and babies. So that was really wonderful. Except there comes a lot of stress with running a business while you're renovating a house and while you've got a 1-year-old baby. And then as I progressed through the business and I got to know the women more, it became really apparent that there was a lot more help these postnatal women needed. So I did a lot more specialist training. I started writing new programs. You can see where this is going, can't you? And it just was bubbling up again. Like, but I knew this time because I knew what the signs were. And I remember the November before COVID, I thought, do you know what, if I was working for somebody else now, I would go and get signed off, because I'm really heading towards this, but I can just feel it coming. But being self-employed, I thought, well, I can't really do that because no one else is going to do it. So I'll just get on with it. It'll be all right. Just crack on. And I did that. And then when COVID hit the year after, and I couldn't run my classes, I just remember turning to my husband and saying, thank goodness somebody has given me permission to stop. And you know, like when you've been really busy and you go on holiday and you go into relax mode, and quite often you get ill because it hits you. It was a bit like that, because I then said it out loud. I just hit the wall, and that was my second burnout. And it wasn't as bad as the first, but it was bad enough. Yeah, it really was bad enough. And it took me probably from like that March, April till about September time to come to. And when I say to come to, I'm even to be able to maybe think slightly through the fog about what on earth I was going to do. And it was at that point really that I had a 4-year-old son, and it was really significantly impacting my relationship with him. And I was just like, what am I doing? This has got to stop. And it was from that moment onwards that I knew that I was going to do everything within my power to never go there again. So I did. I started to add in all those things that I'd probably been told over the years to do, but it's all very well people telling you to do things, but when you're really stressed, it's just something else to do. You can't relax, you can't think straight. I remember trying yoga. It was just like a clock watching exercise. I was just like, oh God, when does this finish? Because I was so in this fight or flight mode. I couldn't sit and do a yoga and breathe. I was so wound up. So I did dabble in things over the years, but nothing. I just couldn't physically or mentally do all the stuff I was being told to do. But anyway, come that September, I started to slowly implement bit more self-care here and there. I built on that. Boundaries, that was huge, putting boundaries in place between business and personal life. And as a business owner, you're in control of that. Nobody else. And it's very easy for those to get blurred and for there to not be any at all. So I put those in place. And I did start to feel better. And I went on like that for another sort of 12 months or so. But then there was still something not right. I find it really hard to put into words. I was still really unsettled, and I still wasn't where I felt like I wanted to be. And I reached out to a coach that I know, because I just thought, I know now that I've done everything I can possibly do on my own, and I need some help off somebody else.
Yeah.
So I reached out to a coach and I worked with her. And interestingly, a lot of the work was mindset and limiting beliefs, which was kind of a missing piece that I hadn't addressed at all, because I've never really heard massive things about that. And within maybe about 6 weeks of working with her, bearing in mind when I met her, my mind was racing 100 miles an hour every day. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I stop the business? Should I do this? It was just this constant loop of not knowing what to do and where to go and what to try. And I just, even on walks, it was just from the minute I woke up to the minute I went to bed. So bearing in mind that when I met her, I was like that and very emotional and not knowing where to turn. And within a matter of about 6 weeks, I was sat at home one night. You know, when people say these light bulb moments, have you experienced one?
Oh, yes. This is why I'm where I am now.
Yeah, but isn't it? You don't really get it till you've been there. I wasn't even thinking about anything to do with business or anything else. I was just sitting one night relaxing, and this thing's where I just went, oh, I know what I could do. Like, I could train to be a coach, and I could use my experience to like help other women so they don't have to suffer for all those years like I did.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know if that kind of coaching existed. So good old Google came out, and I did a bit of searching, and I was like, well, wellness coaching would pretty much encompass everything I've been through. But then I spent another few weeks after that talking myself back out of it, as you do, because you think, who am I to go from that? How can I have gone from like 6 weeks ago not think straight to 6 weeks later saying I'm going to do that? But it never went. It all was there. And I had a few more sessions with Rachel, my coach, and I just knew it's what I had to do. So I wrapped up my fitness business. I was lucky enough that my husband was able to support me. I dedicated the rest of that year to training to become a certified wellness coach. And what was really interesting, as I went through that training, there's these like 12 elements of your wellness. Every single one, in some way, I had muddled my way through over the years. That mindset bit with Rachel was the missing link. And then it all just came together. And, you know, when you just feel like you're supposed to be somewhere, like more than anything.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, that's why I am where I am now. Because it is, as you say, you have that sort of eureka moment, and you realize that, you know, the journey that you've gone through, it's become a gift. Because eureka moment where you go, right, okay, well, this is work, this is work, this is work, this is what's helped me, this is why I'm feeling amazing now, and being able to give that back to somebody else and share that with them so they can either avoid or circumnavigate, you know, escape it. It's just a wonderful feeling, and you get such a wonderful energy buzz from it, I think.
You do, and it's a feeling I've never really experienced suddenly, because I've never really honestly known what I've wanted to do. I had ideas at school, I want to be a vet, you know, when you're really young. But when it gets to the point where you're supposed to know, I've never really known what I'm supposed to be doing. And it was just this feeling of like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, because learning that theory side, if you like, and gaining that coaching experience, but then pairing that with my personal experience, because I think in everything you do, if you've lived it and breathed it and you've experienced it, that's powerful, more powerful, isn't it? But to combine those two together, it just puts me, I feel it's like a really privileged position now where I can help others, because I would love to catch people before they get there. Human nature, generally, people don't get help until they're broken. And even if that is the case, if I can help somebody get through that much quicker than I did, like, it was 10, 12 years for me from start to the finish of, because even when I was doing that training, I was still going through this process of my own healing, if you like, that was ongoing. So if I can help somebody else so they don't suffer alone like I did for all that time, then that's my aim now, really.
First of all, thank you for sharing your story. And the interesting thing is so much of what you're saying is stuff that I hear all of the time, by virtue of the fact the biggest problem is that most people don't know they're heading towards burnout. As you turned around and said, there's all these things that are happening. It's that creating awareness of how you're feeling, what's driving you to feel stressed or anxious, but also all of those other things that go along with it, the stomach aches, the head going at 1,000 miles an hour. One minute you're feeling really energized, and then next minute you're absolutely shattered. But because you're such a resilient character that just keeps on going, you tend to bounce out of those moments where you're feeling really low and come out the other side and start again. And then you do on repeat, until all of a sudden your body goes, do you know what? You're not listening to me, so I'm going to bloody well do it for you. And as you turn around and say, you have those couple of days where you go on holiday and you crash. But instead, what this does is that you crash completely.
Oh yeah, and it takes, people need to know, it takes a really long time to get over. It's not like, well, I'll go on holiday for 2 weeks. No, that ain't gonna cut the mustard, I'm afraid. It's you're saying there about symptoms. Like I'm really passionate about raising awareness around the symptoms, because for me personally, I had all these different symptoms that I dismissed. Oh, well, it's because of that. But then it got to the point where I felt so out of sorts. I thought, oh my God, something's really wrong with me. But because I couldn't really pinpoint it, I didn't feel like I could go to the doctor. But at the same time, I was also really worried that I had something really seriously wrong with me.
Yeah.
And I remember I can picture exactly where I was in my old house. I was reading a magazine back in the days when I had time to read magazines. I don't do that anymore. When children come along, you don't read magazines, you've got kids, do you? I read loads of books, by the way, now. But anyway, so I was reading this magazine, and it was a two-page spread on stress, and it had like tick box of symptoms, and I had every single one. And I remember just saying, oh, I'm just stressed. And I parked it. That was quite early on in the journey. And I parked it because for me, the relief that I didn't have something really seriously wrong with me was enough. What I say now is, had I fully understood the implications on me physically, mentally, emotionally, I would never, ever have celebrated just being stressed.
But that's the problem, is that people do dismiss it. They do just go, oh, I'm just stressed, it's busy, this is going on, that's going. So they justify it as being okay. And it's not okay. There are sometimes good stress. So if you're on a motorway and there's a car pulls out, you need that instant stress factor to kick in your adrenaline so you can respond quickly. But then there's other stress, as you turn around and say, it's a culmination of lots and lots of things that are going on. And the listening to your body is so crucial. Your body or your mind, because you say it can have so many impacts, and the long-term implications is that effectively it can kill you. It can lead to depression where people end up suicide. It leads to situations where their gut health is so bad they can barely function. IBS. You said I had it for donkey's years. I had IBS. But I used to think it was to do with different foods and all those kind of things. And yes, there was an element. It was to do with the food that was put inside me. But the other things is that, those headaches, and they might only be small headaches, but when they start becoming more regular, or the neck aches, the aching arms, the skin rashes, all of those things, you start bringing them together, and right, yeah, there you go. You've got them all together, and your burnout is going to hit you, and it's going to hit you big time. And the problem is that people go, oh, well, I've got to keep on working because I need to pay the bills. Trust me, if you don't stop, you will not achieve what it is that you're setting out to achieve, because you're not going to be able to function to achieve it. And it can take years, not just a couple of days. It can take years to actually recover, can't it? So
absolutely. I think it's taken me, if I think when I started making the changes, which was September, October 2020, and it wasn't until December 22 that I then reached out to my friend who's a coach, like, can you help me? That was 12 months of trial and error on my own. And then really it was like another 12 months after that. But there's even been a little bit in the last year. Only I call them more tweaks than anything else. It's not the really major stuff, but yeah, you're looking at 12 months plus. And it's not just, oh, I'm better. It's doing things and learning ways and habits that you do all the time. I remember a client said to me, she's like, oh, do you still do all this stuff every day? Because I think people think that when you've healed yourself from stress, that you just chilled out and everything's great. Yeah, everything's fine all the time. It's like, no, I have things I do every day to ensure that I keep my body and mind in a calm state, if you like, to keep in that parasympathetic nervous system, so I'm not constantly. And then I have extra tools in my kit, because life's life, and life throws extra challenges at you all the time, and there's always going to be more stressful situations. So sometimes I need to do other things, but the fact that I've done the daily stuff means I've already got this kind of nice level, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If I do have a stressful situation, I can add my other tools, but then you kind of recover more quicker. It doesn't. I've often referred to stress as like dictating my life, because it just took over.
Yeah.
No control over it. So it's gaining that element of control where you know what you need to do to manage your stress better, but maintaining it's a maintenance thing all the time, definitely.
Well, it's habit. I mean, if you think about it, if you're doing something, if you've been doing something all your life, I mean, I'm 53 years old now, and if you've been doing something all of your life and it's habitual, you've got to break that habit. So it's
Really
not going
hard.
to be a habit that's going to snap out straight away. The important thing is that once you've created the awareness, then you can check in with yourself, because you suddenly go, why am I doing that? So, because you know it's not the right thing to do. And as you say, is those daily practices. Now, I'm intrigued. Could you please share to me what your daily practices are that you believe can be like really
Yeah,
helpful just to keep you moving? So,
yeah. And I say this openly because it's very personal, and what suits one person doesn't suit another. But my absolute non-negotiables are journaling. Journaling is one of the most powerful things I've ever done. I used to turn my nose up if I'm sitting writing in a book. Oh. However, now the power of it was journaling that cleared my head, that mess it was in.
yeah.
That it allowed me to remove all the rubbish, all the nonsense, that then allowed me to think straight for the first time in probably over 10 years. And believe me, when you've had your head and your thoughts and your mind racing like that, the feeling that you get when I first started journaling, it was pages of pages. It's like, oh God, I'm handsome. And then I remember sitting down one day and I was like, nothing on my mind.
Yeah.
It
Which is
was amazing.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And
So
you've got that silence.
yeah, it's like I've absolutely got nothing to write on this piece. And I actually wrote it because I just thought I'm just going to write that down. I put the date and it's like, I have nothing on my mind today. And that to me, so I'm sharing that because people do turn the nose up at journaling, and it's powerful just to clear your head out. So journaling is absolutely non-negotiable. My other is meditation.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I also used to turn my nose up at meditation. I'm not doing that. And if I'm honest, I was that kind of, I say wired because that's what it felt like for a long time. I couldn't sit for 30 seconds, never mind 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes. I can go off to another land now and meditate. I only ever do 10 minutes at a time. Sometimes I might treat myself to 20, but it's usually 10. So journaling, meditation, and definitely getting outside in nature.
Yeah.
That is the best medicine. And I know that if I'm struggling with anything, or I'm trying to work on something in the business and things aren't flowing and you hit that block, it's just the biggest problem solver. I go out and within either I'm still going where I'm going, even before I've started to head back home, it's there, I've got it, it's solved. It's not, I don't do it just for that, for business solutions. I'm just sharing that as a business owner. That's a powerful tool for me. But as for how it makes me feel as well, I just love the benefits of being outside.
I think people underestimate the power of going outside and getting fresh air. Even the best way to start your day is by actually going outside and getting out into the fresh air. And I know sometimes you might not see the sun behind it, but it's still there. And the good thing is it also helps with your circadian rhythm as well, because
Yeah, absolutely.
off that way in the morning, it then sort of helps with the balancing of when you should be going to bed at night, and then you get more restful sleep. But at the same time, you're connecting with nature. And when you're going for a walk, it helps to clear your head. You can just refocus. And when there's a problem, as you turn around and say that it needs to resolve, whether it's personal or professional, it doesn't matter what it is, just by the, moving forwards helps you to just clear your mind, clear your head, and get creative and help resolve those problems.
It's quite magic, really. I mean, I walk every day because I've got dogs anyway, but my third kind of, well, I've got 4 non-negotiables really. My other morning thing that I do is yoga, and people say, oh God, in the morning you get up and you journal and you meditate and you do yoga. It really doesn't take that long. Journaling takes like 5 minutes. Once you've cleared out a lot of the rubbish, it gets much shorter. Although some days it's longer. If you've had a challenge, you can go back to days where it's longer. That takes 5 minutes. Meditation takes 10, and I do a 10-minute yoga. It's 25 minutes in the morning to not just set you up for the day, but to give you all those benefits of calming your nervous system and helping your stress levels. It's worth it.
And the funny thing is some of those individuals that say, oh, I haven't got time for that, probably spend, and I can't see if you can see the phone there, 25 minutes on the morning. First thing that they do before they've even got out of bed is on the bloody phone. So they're already on texting, they're already emailing or responding to posts and all those, which is going to actually increase all the anxiety. So they're already in a stress state. So they're already tensed up. So the muscles in their neck are all aching, all that lot. And instead, as you said, you can just give, even if it is, I mean, I like doing my journaling at night time. So before I go to sleep, it's like making notes and like being, showing gratitude for what I've achieved during the day, or, nice experiences and all those kind of, and also what my intentions may be for tomorrow, just those kind of things. And then, as you say, with the yoga, you can just do like a 10-minute routine just to make sure that you're in flow, stretching you out. And as I say, the meditation, it is wonderful. And they'd rather spend 20 to 25 minutes on their phone causing anxiety.
I've got it's a very strict boundary of mine, and my notifications, see, this is the thing, like, we are not controlled, well, people are controlled by the phones, unfortunately, but in theory we are not, because we have the choice to go and turn notifications off. We have the choice to take the power back and say that I'm not having my life dictated to by every ping and whatever message is coming in. And for me, like, I turn notifications off at a certain time of night. Don't turn them back on until I've dropped my son at school and I've done my first walk with the dog. And the other morning, for whatever reason, I don't know, I must have just slipped up. I checked some messages, and one of the messages made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. It spoiled my morning because it played on my mind and I couldn't relax and I couldn't think straight, and I was rushing to get back because I had to respond. And it just reminded me, Jen, that is why you don't look at your messages in the morning. And I just wish more people would give themselves that grace to start their day calmly, to set themselves up for the day ahead, because once you leave your house and get into your workplace or wherever it is, you kind of lose a little bit of the control because everybody's firing stuff at you and stuff's happening.
The just 5 minutes. Have you got just 5 minutes? Have you got just 5 minutes? Which doesn't end up 5 minutes. It ends up like 20 minutes. And at the end of it, you've given all yourself to them, and you've not actually given anything to yourself at all.
Whereas if you start the day giving yourself something, and I know it, and I understand, I'm not sitting here preaching to people, because I understand that when my son was younger, people with younger children, that isn't always possible. It's different. Mine didn't used to be a morning routine because I couldn't do it because he was up early. But as he's got older, he sleeps a bit longer, or I've explained to him why I need to do that and please don't disturb me, and he doesn't, because he understands. So I totally get that it's not possible if your children are younger and they're up sooner, because there comes a limit of how early you should get up to do your self-care. But I believe there's all moments through the day where people can just weave little things in just to give themselves, like,
but as you turn around and say, I think that's the problem, is that people think you've got to do certain things at certain times. On this whole 4:30 club or 5 o'clock club, you can keep it. Sorry, I'm not interested. If that works for you, fantastic. I'm not going to fall in the trap of trying to do something to fit somebody else's desires. My roadmap of my day is based on my needs, my boundaries, and if I want to, I plan it that I have nothing planned with a client or meeting before 10, unless there is absolutely no room for manoeuvre for certain reasons, and that's life. But I plan it for that way. So it means that anything I do up until that point is based on my terms. And if I decide to do some work, then that's entirely down to me, but not with somebody else, not having a conversation with somebody. If I want to go for a walk, I go and have a walk. Or the other thing is that making those moments during the day where you might just take 3 or 5 minutes out, just go sit outside, just be present, just take some time out, just relax. It doesn't have to be these marathon things that you need to do. And the other thing is that people get anxious if they're not journaling every single day. You don't need to journal every day. You don't need to meditate every single day to the point where it's not becoming an enjoyable experience. You need to do it because you're in flow. You're ready to do it. I'm up for it. I really want to do this. I kind of don't make it, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do my yoga and I've got to do that. And if I don't do this, then you're then creating anxiety for yourself in that moment as well.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a really good point. And I think it's important that people think about like what they need at that time, because yes, I have those set things I do, but some mornings I don't do it. But I don't beat myself up. I used to, but I don't. My attitude to a lot of things has changed massively. And just as you were saying about, if you want to go for a walk or have a break, I don't know what you found as a business owner, but like when it's kind of instilled from school, isn't it? The set time and the break times and the lunch time, and you work this time and then you come home and blah, 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 and then you're in the workplace and you have that. But as a self-employed person, you can choose what hours you work. You can choose whether you go out for a walk when you want. It's very flexible, but there's always still that voice in your head, oh, I should be sat at my desk now working because it's such a time. Well, I can't possibly go for a walk because I haven't done. And I've been really working not to do that, because it's my business. I can choose to run it as I wish to help keep my stress at bay as well. But it's interesting, I don't know if you get the same, where it's this battle of I shouldn't be doing that at this time, but that's the beauty, isn't it, of being able to please yourself and do what you need at this moment. Because what I've learned is that if I force myself to sit when I'm really struggling to do something, it doesn't get done. I get frustrated, I get more stressed. If I'm struggling to do something now, I close my computer and I go out and I get back and it can be done within minutes.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting concept. I don't know if you felt that similar thing coming out of corporate to yourself, of just being able to flow with what works for you.
While I was at the Retrain Expo in November, and I was on a leadership panel, and we were talking about these kind of things, and it was mainly, some of it was also women within a leadership environment. And one of the guys that was, one guy, Tom, amazing man. I actually met him through Executive Networking Events Group, which is like an American group that's global, completely unassociated, and he happened to be on the same panel. And he's really, really lovely in the sense that he gets the whole concept, that we need more male and female energy within a workplace to have the emotional intelligence, the balance between sort of, that risk-taking approach, but also the approach where you're sort of nurturing and empowering others and all those kind of things. And one of the things that he says, the biggest mistake quite often, and when women do it, is that why do they set up a business designed on a man's world? And what he means by that is that quite often the women that are actually running the business at home or at work, they've got children, they're tending to be the ones that are looking after them, and they're organising the home and all that lot. Plus they've got their monthly cycles and everything like that. So why don't you organise your business around that, rather than organising your business around an 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 or whatever ritual that a man has set up? And he's absolutely right. But because we've been programmed.
We've been programmed for a really long time, haven't we?
Exactly. And you've just got to flip it. And I mean, now I have flipped it and turned around and said, right, this is how my week goes. And if I want to start really early, then I will start early. If I want to finish really late, I'll finish really late. But then I'll then turn around and say, right, because I'm going to be working in the evening, because some networking groups are late at night or the training. So I'll have windows in it during the day where I go, right, okay, this is my time. I'm going to have an early lunch with my husband, going to have a walk, maybe have a sleep. I don't know, but I can do that because it's my choice to do it. So,
yeah, and why shouldn't it be? But it is I mean, I've been working on it a lot and I'm so much better, but there's still these odd occasions where I'm like, oh, come on, Jen, you're really pushing it now. It's 10:30 and you still haven't like sat down at your desk. But it's like, well, I've had other stuff to do, and I know, because I work I like working in time blocks and set things, and I know that I get stuff done in less time by being calmer from doing the other stuff. So
Yeah.
your
mind gets clearer. Your mind becomes clearer, so you've got more time to think.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. So, I mean, you turned around and said about your mind being like going at 1,000 miles. Did you used to say the inevitable words? It's like, oh, I'm most creative at night time because my brain is really active. Did you ever use that phrase?
I didn't know.
Right. So
No.
one ladies, well, not one ladies, many of the ladies I actually talk to, but they turn around and say, oh, my most creative time is at night time and I've got all of these ideas. And I was like, no, what it is that your brain hasn't switched off. So you're thinking about all of these different ideas, but then when you try to actually, stay up and they start working on all that, look, I said, it's going to take you probably an hour and a half to do whatever it is you're going to do. I said, whereas if during the day you learnt to shut down and stop and breathe and take time for yourself, the idea that you thought of, you probably resolve in 15 minutes during the day because you've got that clear space.
People don't get that, do they? I think you've got to be working. Like, I know for me, when I set my first business up, it was, I look back now and really, like, I felt like I was working so hard. I was achieving absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And I look back to what I'm achieving now in a day and how I'm moving things forward. But that's the problem with stress. You feel like you're working hard and you've got to do, but actually you're very often not doing anything particularly productive. And I know for me, my mind didn't race so much that at night I couldn't switch off and go to sleep. But the flip side for me was I've got so much to do. I've got to get my son to bed. I wish he'd go to sleep because I've got to get stuff done. And that really massively impacted my relationship with him because he was only really small then. And I'm like, I didn't have a child to like wish him to bed so I could get on with work. But because I was stuck in that place, I couldn't see the other way because I wasn't getting stuff done through the day because I was so stressed I wasn't being productive. Do you get me? So I kind of had this knock-on effect. But I totally get what you mean. It's not about that creativity. It's just that you've not done what you could do if you just gave yourself a moment to switch off.
Breathe. Literally, it's breathe, isn't it?
I understand why women don't get that when they're there because I didn't.
Yeah.
I listened to a podcast years ago about this working less, achieving more, and this guy had done all these experiments in quite big organizations and it was really successful. And I just remember thinking, yeah, right, whatever. That's like, because I was so in the moment, in the place, I just couldn't possibly think, how could I possibly slow down and do less hours and get more? So I totally get that women that are in like the depths of it don't get that. But now on the other side, it is completely possible. And it's kind of what we want to do as well as part of what we do, isn't it? Is guide women to show them that is possible.
Yeah. Well, what's the old saying? Slow down to go fast.
Yeah.
So I think it's a beautiful thing to say.
Definitely, isn't it? Yeah.
And to say. And the other beautiful thing is no is a sentence, maybe along with a no thank you, but no is a sentence. You don't have to justify why you're not going to be doing something. And it's okay to do that. It's a powerful word, but we quite often leap into saying yes before we've even realized it. So it's just, and that's where the breathing time comes in as well.
I was going to say that's a perfect opportunity when you need to take a breath before you say yes.
Yes. And
take a breath and then say, well, and I sort of advise people, just if you don't want to say no straight away, because people don't like saying no, do they? Like, just so I'll have to check my diary, and it gives you that breathing space to go away and check and then formulate a response. But your response shouldn't be a great big long explanation about why. It should just be, I'm sorry, I can't make it, thank you.
Thank you. And that's what I'm saying, is it no thank you, not this time, no I'm not available, no thank you. Those kind of things. But it is that fear, and it is so you feel compelled to say yes. And whether it's with friends, family, work colleagues, it's that, as I call it, the people pleasing element of us that's been trained into us, that if you say no, then you're not a very nice person, or you'll be judged, or you fear what other people say, or you're not being kind. And the reality is that you've got to learn to put some personal boundaries in place in order for you to be kind to yourself, and respect yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm conscious of the time. I think me and you could talk for ages. We're nearly an hour. It's so time flies. So you've given us some tips of what you would recommend daily to be able to do that. So are there any specific books that you would recommend anyone that you think really help them? So
when I saw this question, I'm going to be really honest and say there isn't. And do you know why? Because I bought books when I was first in the height of my stress, books. that I never read.
Yeah.
Because I was so stressed, I couldn't sit and focus on reading a book. And when that originally happened, there wasn't the beautiful thing called podcasts there is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, I remember buying all these books. I can't remember what they're called, but I remember I had this flurry of, well, I got this book. I just know that if I did read any, I don't remember them because everything just kind of went like that. So there genuinely isn't a book I can recommend, but I know that from my second burnout, I found podcasts really helpful because they're bite-sized and they're little bits of information that you can take in, and hearing like what other people, I think like sometimes like just being able to listen as opposed to read and absorb something, you can take it in and you can relate. I found that the second time around more helpful to kind of cement and seal, like validate why I felt how I felt and why.
Yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone.
So self-help books are wonderful and I'm not knocking them, but I think you've definitely got to be in the right headspace to read a book. And I just never was. And interestingly now,
I listen to books. I love podcasts, and there's a whole host I could recommend. But with books, I like listening to audiobooks. I have the copy, but I like listening to them. And if there's something that I find really I really, really love that, then I mark the book. So I've got it as something that I can go refer back to as something that I'd capture. So I'm a combination.
Yeah. Interestingly now, I do a lot of reading, but fictional reading as part of my wind down at the end of the day. It's become actually a bit of a joke in our house that I'm always disappearing off to bed early and I'd rather sit with my head in a book than sit and watch TV. So it's interesting that I could never read, not I couldn't read, but I didn't have the headspace for any kind of reading before now, whereas now it's my go-to for a complete switch off from the real world. And interestingly, because I've been listening to a lot more podcasts as well lately, there's actually a few books now I do want to buy that aren't fictional because I feel like now that I would really enjoy reading them. And I think it's an important message I've shared because some people feel under pressure, don't know, I've got to read this book and I've got to take this in and I've got to do this. It's just like another added pressure if you're struggling that you don't really need.
No, I think that's the important message that you've said here is that it's not a one size fits all. We all have our different ways of learning. We have our different ways of changing who we are, what works for us. If you turn around and say, it could be coaching, it could be training, it could be therapy, it could be reading books, or it could be listening to, podcasts. It doesn't matter what it is, but when you can find your sweet spot, then just embrace that. But don't put pressure on yourself that you have to do a certain thing in a certain way and conform to what anybody else does. And the biggest thing, and you would know someone that's had burnout like myself, is that sometimes it's just the act of getting out of bed is a great achievement. So congratulate yourself for that. And that's just be kind to yourself, one step at a time. Sometimes those steps might be marathon steps, and there will be other days where, you know what, I've just moved from this spot. Congratulations.
If that's what it takes, absolutely. It's one thing I do I'm really passionate about is that, and it's a message and how I work with people, it's about taking small steps. I see the most wonderful transformations with people that take the smallest steps, and at the time when they come up with this plan, what they're going to do, you can almost see is this going to make any difference, give it a go sort of thing. It's amazing. And the beauty about small steps is they become a habit quite easily. And when something becomes a habit, you do it without thinking about it. So if you take one small step, and so like, I do 4 things fairly religiously every day, but I didn't used to. I started out with 1. I started journaling every day. And that really helped. And I got in the habit and I did it without thinking. Then I added the meditation. And it's the same for everybody. And just take small, it doesn't matter how small they are, because it's a step forward and it's a step towards where you need to be.
And away from where you were.
Absolutely.
My biggest one, because it was COVID, was I see a pattern forming with many people when COVID seems to be the year, but was walking my dog, because I had to walk my dog every single day. And because I was out in fresh air, that was like constant walking where the noise started clearing. And then I introduced the yoga, then I introduced the journaling. So it was like the reverse order of it. But the fact, actually gardening as well. just doing gardening every single day, because the weather was amazing, but doing the gardening every single day, connecting with nature, where you're grounding all of the time, all of those kind of things. And then the noise stops. And it's such a wonderful thing. So everything works differently for us. Well, I am conscious that it is an hour into it. It's been lovely chatting with you, and I'm sure we could keep on going. So but it'd be nice to say maybe on our next series is that we have a chat with each other and see where we're both at on our journeys. Because as you say, it is a constant journey, and it's not a race, and we are all human. We just got to be kind to ourselves and learn to love ourselves. And when we love ourselves, then other people start loving us as well, which then means that we can thrive and shine beyond belief, because we're all limitless. Thank you again, Jen. It's been an absolute pleasure. And for anybody that has taken some really good sound bites from this, then please share it with any of your friends, your family, anybody that you think this would help them, whether it's as entrepreneurs or business owners, or do you know what? Those mothers that are out there looking after their children and trying to run busy lives. It can help anybody from that perspective. So, Jen, just as a point, where can people find you? I know we'll be sharing your social media links, but where can people find you?
Yeah, so Instagram is jenwilson_wellness. That's the main place I hang out. And my website, jenwilsonwellness.co.uk.
Okay, and do you have any assets that you'll be sharing with the audience if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some guides available. There's 4 ways to reduce stress, and I've got 8 micro habits to burnout proof your business. And also, going back to what we said about understanding the signs and symptoms of stress, I've devised a quiz really just to bring awareness to people around the symptoms of stress. So if somebody's a bit like, well, I'm not sure, am I not, is it really affecting me? That's just a really great way to see it on a piece of paper and go, oh, hang on a minute, I maybe need to do something about this. So yeah, they're my sort of 3 main resources available to people, whichever one speaks to you really.
Okay, thank you very much, Jen. And as I say, if anybody else you think that would benefit from this podcast, then please share it to them, and also hit the subscribe button on your way out. So anyway, take care, have a fantastic day, and I am going to go and get some fresh air myself.